Hi, everyone. This is the Product Mind partners here for our fourth podcast of the year. And today we're just going to cover ground on all the things that have been happening in the world of AI. Now,
All of it?
like everyone, we've been sort of sitting here marveling at the pace of change. There's just so much going on. I think people started out thinking that this was we'd hit a plateau, but things are moving quickly. So we're going to cover some of that stuff. This is our chop session on podcast. So the first thing we'll talk about, because it's on everybody's mind, is what's up with Anthropic in the military.
Okay. So what is up with Anthropic in the military? The funny thing about this is I think this started off as a story not about a story and was like, I think, the typical way in which the Trump administration negotiates with anybody, which is, like bullying tactics and trying to hit them over the head. And then it morphed into something completely out of everybody's control. And I think they probably figured when they delivered the ultimatum that would have the proper effect, and it went completely sideways.
Yeah, so to catch people up, just so they know the chronology, the US military had a contract with Anthropic. Their own rules said that they could use it only for certain things because Anthropic has been clear from the start. And their own rules not only agreed to that, but they also agreed that there'll be human in the loop for these things, especially for military purposes. That's the baseline. Then the Department of Defense decided under Hegseth that they wanted to be free because they wanted to attack Iran and maybe also attack.
They wanted to change the language to all lawful purposes, right? And who knows what the law is?
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
that was where
we have a history from Iraq and other conflicts showing that lawful can be misinterpreted or interpreted by DOD lawyers to be whatever people want. Anthropic says, no, we're not going to change our contract. What's the problem? Why is this new? And then they give them an ultimatum. Now, unbeknownst to people, the ultimatum was driven by their attack plans for Iran. They wanted to attack Iran. They already had plans to use Claude for it, and they wanted the ability to do that.
Right.
And then the company didn't knuckle under. It did not knuckle under. Now, there are many reasons why this is surprising. Well, first of all, I believe that Amadei is Jewish, correct? Right?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
I think he is. This is obviously involved the Israeli state. I think people just expected him to, this is the Department of Defense, and he did not. And so a couple more quick things. Obviously, the US has attacked erroneously schools with children in it, right? Maybe with Claude Tech involved or not. Maybe they didn't put out a human in the loop. Who knows what happened? So who knows? This has happened before. And of course, what we know is that OpenAI, on the same day that Claude, Anthropic became persona non grata, announced a new deal with the US Department of Defense while claiming that they had the same protections that Claude did. But why would they announce it on the same day? So, chronology.
A lot of this, again, is everyone trying to optimize for what they think is right. However, the administration in general doesn't really care about what the opponent thinks. But I think if you look for 2 seconds and you figure out the founding of Anthropic versus OpenAI, and Amadei very, very clearly stating, this is the reason why I'm doing this. Yeah, okay, fine, more money. Okay, but also his principles. Fundamentally, this is the guy who invented a lot of the tech we use right now. So this is not like, someone just screwing around. This is someone saying, like, I am one of the inventors here. I don't like the direction that Altman is taking this company. Goodbye. I'm going to create something that's actually ethically aligned. And, if he had gone back on that, he would have destroyed, the foundational base of his company. Now, we can talk about the fact that they've innovated way past that, and I think that's worth talking about. Okay, but the fact that the Pentagon even wanted this is because Claude is deeply embedded in what they do right this second. And so that boggles the mind too, because what are you going to do? Turn it off? And that's where it is.
No, they've said that it will take them 6 months. They said that it will take them 6 months to unplug that stuff. And I
Yeah.
think that's what OpenAI is. No, just to be clear, like everyone is facing pressure. Everyone is facing, even Claude recently, Anthropic changed their terms of use related to TED. They literally said some of their safety principles they took back, right? Because they're facing market pressure. And they said they were very truthful. They said, listen, if the market is going a certain direction, we can't forever be the people with our finger in that. That's not possible all the time. So they were clear. But the thing is, for them, this wasn't just a market going a certain direction. This was a principle thing, right? And it's not just a principle thing. They knew that their technology is not precise enough to do life and death. I think that's what they're reacting to. And the Pentagon is pretending that it is, if that makes sense. Isn't it? What do you have to say? Because I take you.
It's, I mean, a lot of what y'all are saying, but for me, it's the behind the scenes thing. To Ted's point, the company was founded on high level principles. And what's even more important to me, like with all of this happening, is that I don't know if you guys know that Eric Ries, Lean Startup Guy, is writing a book called Incorruptible. And he's writing this book about companies that have high level principles, etc. Guess what also happened beginning of this year? Eric Ries took a job with Anthropic.
There you go.
Right. So the minute this happened, I was just trying to figure out if Anthropic would budge and if they could budge. So there's something happening behind the scenes that we have no access to, but it is going to be, this is a defining moment for the company. And I think they're bought into a long-term commitment to being principled. Or if we see Eric Ries leave and a few others leave, then we know something's off.
That's
But I
fair.
believe that at the
I'm
core,
betting on the
there's something
latter.
happening here.
I'm betting on the latter. I have no
Maybe
faith in these commercial entities.
It's over the time. It's over time, right? Over time, I
Yeah.
think it all fades. Founders have the capability through, voting shares and gravitas, and in this case, like
Yes.
literally being the creator of the technology, right? He's got a lot of capability, but over time, his ability to influence this fades, right? Like, look at other companies. But by the way, what about the Altman effect on this? Okay, because talk about founders influencing this. Altman goes charging in, okay, with willy-nilly, essentially, being like, aha, commercial opportunity, get rid of them, put us in, and then just does not give a crap about what happens to their reputation at all. Doesn't care.
Bad look for them.
So can I go ahead? Isn't it?
No, I mean, just underscoring what you said is like, I mean, we knew this was going to happen, but I think he could have just paced himself a little. Just like, dude, wait a week,
a little more subtly.
Play nice. But no, exactly. I was like, wow, okay. No PR help here.
It's
So
just a little more style and swagger, into the frame.
And especially with the actual war going on, right? This isn't a moot point. Like literally missiles are flying. What the hell?
Can I channel Sam Altman? So the last 3 months have been really difficult for OpenAI, right? Claude's brand suddenly has become, like gold star amongst enterprises with co-work and developers with code. And so because, they've staked their claim on different things like consumer chat GPT, but also like a health, enterprise and very niche enterprise, healthcare, government, and so on and so forth. They're facing a lot of pressure because this brand thing matters, right, to these first mover markets. And he decided that this was a good time to try and steal the spotlight, but it's a terrible time. But, look, I also think that because we've seen this movie before, the other thing that's going on in his mind is this. These products are still early on, right? They're not mainstream yet. Like, as much as we live this stuff, 90% of the world and of enterprises are still just like dabbling into these things. So if you think about a 10, 15-year market, which these things are, there's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows. There's going to be people who win, cycles, lose cycles. So he's betting that no one will pay attention. Like the real prize is still in the future. And so this doesn't matter.
Maybe, or he can't help himself. But yeah, I mean, that's, maybe a little bit of both. Right. But then, by the way, Amadei came back super hard against him. Right. So, this is the feud is on. Right. And
it's always been on, though, just to be clear. It's been on like Donkey Kong, but just not in the spotlight. Because I mean, that's why would he leave? Why would he leave? Yeah. Why would he leave? He
That's
just
fair.
Yeah.
doesn't believe. He doesn't believe. Just for people paying attention, OpenAI was ethical AI from the start. That's why it's called OpenAI, right?
Hmm.
And they were a nonprofit, a public good company, which you can do in the US. But in the recent months, very quietly, they've become a for-profit company, right? And they have ambitions to take over operating systems, your mobile devices. They just have all encompassing it. Make a lot of money, but their ambitions are so much bigger than that. So they're spending a lot of money as well.
They don't make a
So
lot
that's
of
where we are.
profit. They make a lot
Yeah.
of revenue.
Well,
Yes.
the revenue, but I'm saying they
Yeah.
could. Like if you
Revenue.
curb your ambitions, you could make profit. But the ambitions are so big, they need like $1 trillion to execute them.
Amazon showed us that path, right? Remember, for how many years it was like Amazon doesn't make any profit. Amazon doesn't make any profit. Amazon doesn't make any profit. And then when they decided to make profit, they just destroyed it, right? Anyway.
Mm.
Yes.
Anyway, but
Yeah.
yeah, let's go back
Yeah.
to the difference in the technology, right? Because Claude Code is eating the world, right?
Oh my
The
gosh.
innovation
It
coming
is.
out of Anthropic is beating the crap out of. I mean, it just, what the hell is going on here? And I think the interesting part on the Claude Code part is that they are openly saying Claude Code is writing Claude Code, right?
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
saying, right, that the machine is improving itself with I assume still some humans piloting or whatever, but like broadly speaking, it's piloting itself.
They've actually pointed out that they've gotten it to the point where it will build a feature on a weekend for itself, and then they look at it
Hmm.
on Monday and see if it's worth it. And they've publicly said that it's software building software. So their model training line, so Opus 4.7 or where 5,
So,
is being driven by Claude Code
God
itself.
itself. Yeah. Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks, they've shipped like major features, remote control, by the way, simplify. These are all, by the way, slash commands for people paying attention. They've shipped like 10 really critical slash commands that make the work of developers easier. And I think they've hinted that most of these were Claude Code listening to developers as millions typed, extracting the best ideas from people just interacting with it.
Which is
Now,
crazy.
this is very important because in the past, let's say Apple has an app store, Windows. To get feedback, they have to install the apps, open the apps, use the apps, find a feedback button to press. Then it gets to the app developer who might pass it on to the platform provider. And this is how, like, the distance between Siri becoming something that Apple knew they needed when it was a
Hmm.
third-party app to the time that they acquired it is years, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
with these interactive applications, people are just telling it what they need. Today, I was like, why did you waste my time with something? This is just this morning. Anthropic, for that's a signal. That's a signal. If a million people say that, they're gonna be Claude Code builds a feature that doesn't waste time in that very specific way.
Crazy. Or obviously, you think about the menu of features that they're building, and then which ones are they highlighting versus others, right? So
Hmm.
but the cycle time is just reduced to nothing or near nothing, which is just again, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome.
For me, it kind of goes back. You remember in the last Chop session where we talked about your book and judgment, this idea, like their unlock, like when you read what happened with in Anthropic, their unlock came in November when they were able to begin to see Claude Code itself critique itself, right? And they had more confidence in its ability to critique, for it to judge itself. So that idea of feedback loops, judgment, right? And it being the unlock for really using LLMs and AI is just reinforced with this. So because they had invested in that self-critique and they saw improvement in that critique, right? That's literally when they were like, okay, now we have something that can better itself. And according to them, the engineer who built Claude was like, you know what? Job done. I don't need to be doing more work here. He stopped writing his own code after that. So it's really interesting that judgment, critique, these are things that become even more important in the feedback loop and the loop
But if
of
AI has judgment, does it
getting
need our
better.
judgment? Right? We
Well,
talked
but
So
about
that
where's
needing
the
judgment.
AI
literally
judgment coming from, right? I think we were saying,
exactly.
yeah, if it's coming from like essentially
And
signals of users, right? Now that's humans again, right?
exactly.
It does make sense to me, right? I mean, again, it's essentially talk about what we're doing right now, because let's not mistake what this stuff is being used for. It's still being used by humans, right? The
Mm-hmm.
cloud code is used by developers, right? And so it does require humans at some point to say, this is how I want to use it, right? It's interesting if it starts to evolve into things that don't require any human intervention in theory, like let's say managing money
Yeah.
or something like that. So anyway, but
When you
it's
intro this, when you intro this session and you're like, Claude is building itself, I was like, oh my God, this is the beginning of the end. This is literally how the movie starts, isn't it?
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah. It's how every
no.
movie
First of
starts,
all,
right?
I have 2 points. One is in the last 2 months, I felt a silent seismic shift. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
this thing you pointed out end of the year was really that the models hit a level. Opus 4.5, 4.6, Codex 5.1,
Mm-hmm.
5.2. We're at 5. By the way, just so people understand, 5.3 Codex codes better than Opus right now. It is the tippity top if you're using that. Just that the brand is so strong, a lot of people use Claude Code. They've hit a point where I don't want to invoke the word AGI because I think no one has a good definition for it. But they've hit a point where their embodied intelligence is really good. And Ted you wanted to talk about something, and I just introduced that so we can pull that thread. They've
I think
become
that's part of it. Yeah.
persistent. They've become last year, this time, if you asked one of these models to do something for 5 hours, it would lose the thread immediately in the first 30,
Mm-hmm.
1 hour. It wouldn't be able to do it. It would just unravel. Now these things can persist for days and
Yeah.
stay on task. Now, in practice, I've used this, a lot recently. In practice,
Yeah.
they get worse and worse
Yeah.
as the time and
There's
the
drift.
context
There's
window,
drift.
it
Yeah.
drifts. But it's
There's definitely
days
drift.
now, not hours. And so they
Yes.
get
No
into a
minute.
point where self-improvement is possible because that's recursive. They get into a point where understanding is very high, intelligence is very high, and this will continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, persistence is one of the bigger changes that's happened, right? And it actually, this applies to humans as well, I think, right? So being able to stay on task and apply, apply good full effort is pretty critical for human excellence as well. So it's not just these models, but yeah, I mean, you and I were talking about this. We talked about it in the last chop session as well. So it doesn't matter what the task is. This concept of being able to stay on point and keep pushing hard, right? I mean, that defines ClaudeBot, OpenClaude, right now, right? It has the interfaces to do what you do. Essentially, it can run your computer like you run your computer, and then it just stays on task, right? And for X long hours, and it just beats its head against the wall to do whatever you tell it to do, even if that's dumb or smart or whatever. That's a big difference. That's a big difference. And I think that recursion is part of that. Feedback is certainly part of it, because if it's really short, you can't have feedback and that kind of thing like that, right? But it's also changing, I think, how people perceive this technology, right? Because so much of this is still the chat interface. It's still, which is again, is no different than kind of like the Google interface. It's like answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, right? As opposed to beaver away, get something done, come back and give me status,
Which is how
right?
humans do it, right? Because humans are persistent. You can
Mm-hmm.
send a smart employee off for a week, and you know you're going to get something good back. And
Exactly.
so they're embodying, they're encroaching.
Yeah. Approaching. They're functioning in a
Yeah.
way that more mirrors kind of human interaction, right?
Which is what I'm saying. How do you define AGI if not some of these things?
Sure. I mean, so a friend of mine who
So,
has a fund has been out there just flat out saying AGI is here, and it was the
Yes.
same Claude
Some
code
people are
moment.
basically saying AGI is here. I have
Yeah.
a take on this, but I won't pollute this particular job session with that. I think AGI is different from what people think it is, but persistent. Okay, the other thing I'm gonna add on top of persistence is tool calling, obviously. I think we mentioned that.
It can do what you do, right? That's it.
I heard something, someone who basically worked on I think Claude, who X, he mentioned something that didn't strike me. So this is going to be interesting to our listeners. 60 years ago, when we designed Unix, we just said text is the basis. So basically every Unix tool is operating on text and emits text. And therefore, every other Unix tool can absorb the do operations, absorb the emittance of the other thing. So all of the Unix is just pipes and text commands. Some of them are very powerful. But when they're done, they can pass on to another command and so on and so on. So this is very key because that decision made 60, 70 years ago is meeting a decision of token-based intelligence, which operates on text. And so every AI can understand Unix commands natively because there's a lot of data about them. And so when these people have a Mac Mini or a Linux machine or WSL on Windows, they can run the entire computer. They can use every command. And there are hundreds of very powerful commands, security related, not security related, on a computer. So they basically can run a computer. They can run a graphical interface. The other day, I did a Monte Carlo simulation just in text with Claude Code because I was trying to simulate energy in the house, if that makes sense. So it's a perfect storm, two different architectural decisions connecting together to make tool calling very powerful.
Yeah, yeah, and it's remarkable, right? Because the vibrancy that was Linux, right, that really just created a diaspora of these tools, right, and everything like that. So yeah, it's pretty remarkable, and we're seeing the kind of new age of agents that can perform in human-like ways. They can do what you do, if you're a Linux hacker, and they can act in a manner that is more consistent with you, i.e., for longer periods of time. And they're starting to improve themselves like you do. So we're starting to see that. Again, maybe that is the definition of AGI. I'm not sure.
Is it that you're pregnant? So what do you got? Like you're staring into space.
I just got a lot of thoughts. I think when we started talking about persistence, we're thinking about, at least the way it's framed is like persistent in pushing through, right? And like, I may go a little engineering wise on you, like because of my background, neural networks and vector databases, etc. But it really comes down, in my opinion, like when you think about it from a human perspective, how people lose the thread, right? Just they lose the thread of why they were doing something, or if we're having a conversation and somebody keeps going on and on and on and on, and you're like, sorry, what were we talking about? That is essentially what I think happens with these LLMs. That's just the truth of it. It's not necessarily the persistence of this. So I think what I'm seeing, at least what I'm assuming is happening behind the scenes, is that as it's traversing the memory corridors, right? It's probably reminding itself of how it got to where it got to, so that it can in fact come back and remind itself, right? Because we know it's so non-deterministic, the path that it's taking in the memory. Sorry, I'm being a little geeked out on this, but I'm simply saying it's not just the persistence as in push harder, keep going. It's this idea of the persistence, not just even in remembering what, right? It's the remembering why, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because I haven't studied enough. Like I'm curious how the engineers are reminding the LLM of the why.
How you got there, right, becomes important, right? It's not just where you went.
Yes, where you got exactly.
So guys, because I've been in this with Fabric, let me tell you what's happening a little bit. Aside from LLM intelligence, what's happening is these things have started writing. So they'll create logs. They start mimicking the brain, essentially. What they do is that they journal. They journal
what's going on
and why, what and why, what and why. Yeah, they put what's called front matter, which just goes in front of skills, but really it is a TOC in at the top. So they don't have to read everything, so they can be token whatever. So the journal is, memory.md is a little bit like that.
.md,
yeah. It will say TOC and it will journal. And it tells why it's journal. So every time it loses a thread, it just goes back. It doesn't have to read anything. It can read its table of contents and front matter and go to the context of why it did what it did. So it's like, oh, okay, that's what I did. And that's how people have built persistence within this thing.
Yeah, I get that. My engineering brain is literally thinking relational, like obviously relational databases, and knowing that we don't use relational databases. We instead use these vector databases and the cosine, and just trying to figure out how it's doing it. I'm no longer in that space, but isn't there? It's very curious about actually achieving this.
So let's we can have a different podcast about that. But on this podcast,
No, don't worry.
let's just
We're not going
throw
to
on a
bore
different
our
part of this
people.
top section. So let me change the topic to our favorite people at Meta. Right now, there's a couple of interesting things happening at Meta, and actually, there's actually news from today about them postponing their new frontier model, right? Which was kind of strangely named Avocado. So you may have heard about the literal billions of dollars that they are spending buying talent and who've come in and out the door, which we'll talk about in a second. But what are they doing to try to take the ground in AI, not just lose to OpenAI and Anthropic? Well, apparently, and Gemini for that matter. And what's happening? Whatever they're doing, not working apparently, because they pushed back that release by a couple of months. I think in May or something like this, and we're supposed to drop like any day now, right? So at the same time, again, as part of this buying spree, Facebook bought Moltbook. Now, if you don't know what Moltbook is, this is the social network, okay, it's more like Reddit, I guess, of agents. Okay, so autonomous agents were registered onto this Moltbook app, all right, and then they were communicating that with each other in a Reddit-like fashion on various topics. And this was one of these concepts of, it's very novel, right, for humans to go watch these bots, talking with each other about it, and where like the crazy rabbit holes this goes down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, all well and good. And then for some reason, Zuckerberg decides, like, I just got to cut these guys a check and buy this. Now, what is going on here, right? Like, is this distraction, right? Is it like, I'm going to spend $1 billion on this and then I'm going to go buy some like new shiny toy? Like, what is going on? Like, it seems like they are just fumbling. Now, luckily, they've got a lot of money and a lot of credibility to be able to keep hiring. But what is going on? Any thoughts?
Well, it's a social network.
Yes.
So I think my thoughts are
what 1/1000th the size of Facebook? Yeah, okay.
The questions in my mind are Moltbook. People don't know what Moltbook is. First of all, it's not in the zeitgeist.
Nobody.
It is basically
geeks. Yes.
OpenClaw. It's OpenClaw is aficionados of OpenClaw / CloudBot, creating a marketplace of agents, a social network of agents, quote unquote. Who knows if that's correct? People say things that's not actually real. And then they bought it. But what would they be doing with a social network of agents specifically? I know, to be clear, they've already imagined this, right? Like Facebook itself, in the last few earnings calls talked about virtual people in the social network, right? People are like, these people are going to get their MAUs up to like beyond 8 billion people, because there's 8 billion people and then there'll be the virtual people within it, right? And so I don't think that has panned out. So it's unclear why this would pan out. Yeah, and also Facebook, just for a business note, Facebook has been some of the smartest acquirers in the Valley, period. Think about WhatsApp, think about Instagram. There are a few others that didn't quite pan out. So we see the ones that did pan out, but yeah. So, so the point is, Zuckerberg was able to always see network effects businesses for what they were when they were young, right? Because he understood how hard it is to build network effects business. So once he saw something like critical mass, he would pay for it and give it a price because he understood the future could be even better. But Moltbook hasn't hit critical mass. It's not in the zeitgeist. He bought it really early, and people could basically decide not to join Moltbook anymore because Meta has it and they don't trust Meta. So those are the questions in my mind. I have no idea, Ted.
Yeah, so I think you do have a point, right? Which is that I think Zuckerberg has shown a good ability to make those kinds of purchases, but those purchases that have really panned out. Now again, Facebook buys countless companies every day, right? Dozens of companies of this tiny size every day, and this is just another one on the list. And because they have plenty of money, so forget about that.
They bought Manus, by the way. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so there's a ton of those, but again, I think the what sticks in people's memory is the ability to do these larger acquisitions, okay, that have like tremendous network effects. That other people might be like, well, that's overvalued, right? And that was every headline. I think when WhatsApp was bought, it was like 20 some people, and that you bought it for how many billions? Like, what is going on? Anyway, now that doesn't look so crazy, right? Not even close. Neither looks crazy. Either the acquisition of WhatsApp or the fact that a small company could be worth many billions, right? So
So if I were Facebook, what I would be interesting for me in the acquisition of Molebook is actually the ability or having the people who have thought about what a network and an infrastructure of agents would look like. Because, like we say, everybody's developing quickly, everybody's moving quickly. So I need to know, I need a bunch of people who, for maybe 6 months or even 7 months, have been thinking in a world where there's a social network of humans, right? What would a social network, or not a social, a professional network or a working network of agents look like? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the issues? What are the challenges? And I need people who have been, that's what they've woken up doing every single day. And if I can take that knowledge and then begin to conceive of a world, a future world, that's what I would be buying, right?
Sure.
So I
So
think that there
talent,
is something there
talent
in the
and
infrastructure,
problem domain,
domain
domain expertise
expertise
and talent,
expertise
which makes
in
sense.
this
When you buy
space.
something this early, it's usually for a company like that, it's an acqui-hire. That's what it
Higher,
is.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is a world. So the other day I was at dinner with a couple of product people, and we were laughing because my past experience as in WP Engine with WordPress, we used to spend so much time, because we monetize with visitors. So we used to spend so much time trying to distinguish between a visitor and a bot, right? There was so much put into that identity of a visitor versus a bot, the fingerprinting, all of that. And now all of a sudden, nobody wanted bots, obviously. Now websites are being built for visitors and agents. So now we have this world of visitors, bots, and agents, and being able to figure out who's who, which is who are you giving credit to? How do you monetize when you have this mixture? So I imagine a world, what is this infrastructure? What is this social network? And not even social, what is this living network that has humans and agents working together and exchanging
You've
ideas,
talked me into it.
etc.
You've talked me into it. You've
Fascinating.
talked me into it. You've talked me into it. No, no, seriously, because there's a
Yes.
future here
Fascinating.
which we don't know, right? And we're going to live in a world where humans and agents interact, or agents interact with agents. And someone's going to figure out the protocols to write, the platform that they run on, the
Boom.
commerce,
The infrastructure that drives it all.
how they
Sure.
exchange money and value. And so if these people are helping Facebook think about that, that could be a big catch. You know what I mean? Forget the pedigree of Molt or OpenClaw.
Mhm.
There's a problem here and value here to get at.
Yeah, and the fact that someone even recognized that, and has spent some time building expertise. Now, of course, that could have been just like, they were high and they were like, I've got a funny idea, and then they went on Claude Code and said, go build me this. Like, who knows, right? But anyway,
And this is the company that called itself Meta. So just think about that. I think
Ah.
that's why.
You keep
They are
having epiphanies
building.
about Meta. You must
he
go
has
work
to justify the
like
name
what's
change
going on.
one way or another.
Okay, so let's end with this. Mark
Mhm.
Zuckerberg, is he like the best product manager executive in the Valley? Because this man is able to write off $1 billion no sweat. This is the guy who understands sunk cost fallacy, right? The metaverse isn't working, cancel, boom, real quick. And people are confused and doing headlines. He doesn't give a shit.
That's true.
And even let's talk about this. I wonder why they delayed the model. Like we said before, we suspect Dario Amodei, Sam Altman have all complained that QWAN, GLM, DeepSeek are free riding on AI
Right.
Labs expertise.
Right.
And part of that free riding, at least in the early days, was Llama 3. They would take Llama and build on top of it. And I believe that Llama has been slowed down because someone called Zuck and said, "Stop releasing
Giving them
this
free
stuff for
Giving
free.
stuff.
You're trying to cripple us by setting the floor of the market, but what you're really doing is you're enabling people outside the ecosystem to fight. So the fight isn't really about us; it's about
Fair.
others. And so it'll be very interesting when they release the next flagship model. I suspect it will not be free and open weight like Llama. I think it'll be more restricted so that people cannot just take it. Because if it's very capable and it's free open weight, just like Llama 3, that might cause more problems down the line for the compatriots. And so his strategy has to be modified. But this man has clearly done the calculations and fired like half of the AI lab he hired just a year ago. Like he just
At
When
great
things
cost.
become clearer to him, he moves quickly. That's why, like, I feel like it's both a terrifying thing, but also like a very good thing.
It is an amazing thing, guys. Remember, one of the things we talk about CPOs and leaders is decisions, making decisions quickly. And that's one of the places I think Zuckerberg actually does shine. We won't always understand the context because obviously we aren't at the table, but I do admire that aspect. Like there are hard decisions being made and he's making them and moving on. Like just let's keep moving. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that
There's
the other
something to be
leaders
said
don't
about
make
that.
decisions, but there's something about that that is interesting. It's one of the good it's going to be a brilliant feature for leaders, particularly where we're moving so quickly. So I don't think it's bad. I mean, that's one good thing about Zuckerberg.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he
um,
reached a little bit, I guess. I don't know. No, honestly though, look, back to persistence, right? And back to being able to be focused on things, right? Um, it is just one of those weird things where people always tell people doing startups like, oh, listen, you need to be really, really wed to your idea until the moment that it's proven otherwise, and then you need to be able to discard it quickly. What the hell of advice does that even mean, right? It means nothing, right? What it's saying is that you need to be able to put a very serious bet and then not get obsessed with the sunk cost, right? I think that is the part that humans are just cannot. They're just not wired for that. They're just not wired for that. Okay, like anybody else would say, I spent literally $1 billion bringing on this team. I better put them to some use, right?
that
And literally anybody else. And I get it. I get the fact that the company's worth $1 trillion. Okay, I get that. That's still only 1,000 times more than you spent on the goddamn team. Okay, so this is crazy. But
no,
you know what?
it's crazy.
That level of decision making, okay, it's a thing. It's something to be I don't know, celebrated, but it's certainly something very valuable. Okay, in this
Yeah.
day and age.
So, but would you think so? Microsoft is known for we've hired you, so we're going to
The
try and make you
opposite.
successful, and blah blah blah, right? When you think about companies out there, which of these paths has worked?
So,
Well,
so
OG man, you
you
were
know,
there. Talk about it.
so there's a nuance, but I think I'll elevate back to where it is. Microsoft has a secret weapon that people don't think about. It has a terrifying sales force that sells Office, but they add add-ons to Office, which is a very good seller. And so if Microsoft has a business that's 100 million, $200 million, they're not going to jettison it because they can keep making money off of it. And this is not trivial money. So Microsoft is not
It's
as
like
quick
it's a
to
cow thing. What's
cut,
that?
cut.
Whatever cow. They're gonna.
No, they're the opposite,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They,
yeah.
they, they will keep that
They're not
feature
be quick.
forever.
They're not gonna be quick to cut
Mm-hmm,
things as
mm-hmm,
Zuck because Zuck has an ad-driven model. If it doesn't make money, it becomes weight to him, weight
mm,
to his
mm,
business. So he has to be more brutal, right? Otherwise, it's literally lost. But Microsoft is just less profit. There's a big
mm-hmm.
difference between
There's
that because of their business models. But
cash cow. They'll
regardless,
milk it for a
yeah,
while.
regardless of context, well, there's a cost to
Mm,
it. The cost is brilliant people working on problems that are not exciting, that are not making a lot of
mm,
money.
Right,
That's a weird, there's a corporate culture of non-performance that eventually creates, right? That you have to
mm,
deal with. If you're a Netflix or Facebook and it's like everything has to earn its keep or you jettison it, there's a certain culture that it creates as well, which is
right.
more rapier,
Yeah. What have you done for me lately?
more knife edge. Good for some people,
mm-hmm.
bad for some others. But I think
Yeah.
aside from context, his ability to do this stuff is remarkable. Let's just call it what it is. We've all been in operating situations where we dealt with sunk costs and it wasn't easy to make these calls. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not because you think about the business, you think about the people, you think about even how difficult it is to announce and to deal with the blowback. All these things are the things that you have to go through your mind, and sometimes you knuckle under, or you don't
Oh
move
yeah.
as fast as
As we,
you want to. Yeah.
100%. It's not easy,
it's
right? And then it persistently making those decisions again and again and again is not easy. But I think what you said is interesting about the fundamental business model being different, right? Because I'm finance. I come from finance. Finance is very much eat what you kill, right? But a bank is not, right? A bank is a cash register. They just want you to keep coming back and ringing the cash register. It's very different than eat what you kill, right? So it creates this mentality of the people that are managing money.
Oh,
And the people
Facebook
that
is
are very
finance, is
different.
a hedge fund, and Microsoft is a bank.
Exactly. Have a
Crazy.
different model and
Yeah,
attract
it's
different
good.
people and therefore treat the kind of decisions that they have to make very differently. Yeah, fascinating.
So you know, one of the things that's happening here for me, and I'm gonna just bring us home, I guess, is that as I think about these headlines, I think about all the decisions. Oh, like it can be really dizzying. And I was having dinner with a few folks recently, and the thing I kept going back to is like the fundamentals really do matter, right? The fundamentals of what issue are you really trying to solve, right? Do you understand your industry? Do you understand what problem is out there? Do you even know what good looks like, right? Because I think the ability for Zuckerberg to make decisions, because he has some vision of what good looks like, so he can come back to that. So, you know, while many people may not think, like I kept saying, go back, remember why you're a product manager, right? Go read our book and remember why you're here to do what you do. And then it even extends into what you're working on, Ted, which is not just, you know, hey, everybody read building market shifts and everything. It's like in that wall where you have clarity, where you know what judgment is, you know what the problems are, how then do you utilize everything that's dizzying around you to be better, right? In this whole period of like ageless peak performance. So it's just when it gets noisy, I'm able to come back to that and say, okay, you know what? There are problems to be solved. I need to have clarity on the problems to be solved, and I need to really utilize these tools to solve the problems and not get carried away with all the noise. And then how do I utilize these tools to do that? So that's what keeps me grounded, because damn, we could be running around with our like chickens with their heads cut off with all this news and noise.
That's right. And that's why we're here, folks, to keep you grounded.
Yes. So look, if you take nothing away from this, it's that Ted and Azina are brilliant. You need to come back to keep listening to them. And the other thing to take away is that persistence and
judgment
Mhm.
are going to be
Huge.
key to your performance,
Huge.
right? We should all come at this with a lot of humility, right? Everyone is basically private when it comes to this new paradigm shift. So be humble, stay curious, and work as hard as you can. All right. We'll talk to you the next session, and stay safe.
Take care, everybody.
Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.